once again.
It's Chupo meter review time. Today we're looking at the Richmeters RM088. Comes with a carrying strap and it even has a flashlight. But is it any good? Let's find out. Hi everybody, welcome back. Today we're looking at the Richmeters RM088 compact digital multimeter. The Richmeters RM088 is definitely a compact multimeter. It has some pretty unique features, including display count of 8,000. It does auto/manual ranging, DC volts and AC volts up to 600, and all the way down to 0.01 millivolts. Has a frequency reading of 40 Hz to 1 kilohertz. And if we take a look at the meter itself, once again, this is a compact multimeter. When I say compact, I'm not kidding, because if we put it beside the tiny Voltcraft VC11, yeah, this Voltcraft is probably the second smallest meter in my collection, and as you can see, yeah, look at that. I mean, it's 1/3 the thickness of the Voltcraft. If we look at the strain relief on these two meters, there's a slightly different implementation, and I'm probably going more towards the Richmeters in terms of the way it's done. If we look at the Voltcraft, we have the standard leads coming out with one solid rubber connection for that strain relief. Now that's not bad. That's pretty well par for the course these days. If we look at the Richmeters, on the other hand, you have the connectors coming out, but they're actually separated. So there's a little more give and take here, which I think is actually a good thing, because the strain relief itself, if we take a closer look here, I think just allows for a little bit better flexibility, and over the long term, probably the Richmeters is going to be hold up a little better in the long run, because the leads have a little more play. They're not nearly as restricted in terms of their movement. Speaking of the leads themselves, the Richmeter leads are quite thin. Once again, if we compare it to the Voltcraft, the gauge on that wire is literally half, maybe even a third. Now, if we look at the Voltcraft, do we have any spec on this? Let's see what it says. So, taking a closer look, the 22 AWG is the gauge for the Voltcraft compared to the 26 AWG for the Richmeter. So, definitely much thinner. Now, the Richmeters RM088 has no selector switch, unlike the Voltcraft. No, they've gone to the push button digital mode, and in this case it actually works quite well. So we will turn on the meter, and you can see it defaults right away to DC mode. We press the selector switch again, and then we are into AC mode, and as you can see, it is a true RMS. Hitting the switch again, it brings us to frequency, and then we have the non-contact voltage detection. That brings us back out again. Now, if we hit the function switch, as you can see here, back to DC mode, AC, and now we have a different select of features. So we're into the resistance mode here. This meter does up to 80 mega ohms, which is quite decent. Pressing again was continuity. Now we're in diode and capacitance. And yes, this small, tiny Richmeters does do capacitance. In fact, it is rated for up to 10 millifarad, which we're going to test out. So, in terms of ranges, usability, it's quite acceptable. There's quite a lot in there for such a small meter. Now, there is no backlight on this multimeter. Instead, what they've done is they've implemented a small LED here on the back, and you can activate it simply by holding the hold button. So as you can see now, we have our LED, and this will stay illuminated until you either turn it off or you press down again on the hold button. There is a slight audible indicator that lets you know when you're changing ranges, and actually in this case, that's okay. The screen itself, I like it. I think it's quite verbose. Perhaps could be a little better in terms of contrast, but once again, if I compare it to another meter, let's say the Richmeters 113D, I would say it definitely holds its own. It's a much more, let's call it a square display as opposed to a rectangle, like your typical multimeter, but they are still, considering it's an 8,000 count multimeter, they're still packing quite a lot of punch into that small display area. So no, it's quite readable, quite clear, and quite contrasty. Now once again, there is no backlight, so the better contrast, the better visual acuity you're going to get from this Richmeters, the better. As well, the Richmeters does include a small user manual, and it's actually quite well done. It's quite explicit to the point, and it tells you exactly what the features are. Now, in terms of the actual utilization of the meter itself, the only thing you really have to get used to is that select/function functionality. Try saying that 3 times fast. What I mean by that is when you turn the meter on initially, you have 2 modes. Either you have your DC, AC, and resistance, continuity, diode, capacitance, frequency. So there's your mode. If you want something less, if you're not going to be testing resistance, you don't need continuity, you just want to do voltage, let's say, you hit your function switch, and then you're left with DC, AC, and frequency, as well as your non-contact voltage. So the only thing to remember is if you do require that extra functionality, then you do have to hit the function switch. Otherwise, you're going to be stuck on, as you can see here, function 1, DC volts, AC volts, and CV. Function 2, millivolts, resistance, diode, continuity, capacitance, and frequency. Anyway, once you understand those modes, it's quite easy to use and really shouldn't be any issues. Next, we're going to do a quick DC power supply test. We're going to put the Richmeters RM088 up against another Richmeters, the 113D, which I recently reviewed. Here we go, starting off. Going to go up to a whopping 10.8 volts and 10.87 for the RM088, 10.88 for the 113D. Taking a little higher, 13.3 volts, 13.39 compared to 13.40. Let's go all the way to 20 volts. Okay, 20 even according to the voltage power supply, 20.09 and 20.12. So very small, maybe a 2 or 3 count discrepancy between the 2 meters. Let's take it up to 26.8 volts, 26.87 for the RM088, 26.91 for the 113D, and take it all the way to the end, 31.4 volts, 31.50 for the RM088, and 31.53 for the 113D. So as you can see, fairly close, maybe 2 or 3 counts off, completely acceptable and looking good. Now, one of the problems with a compact meter such as the RM088 is the fact that you're stuck with the leads. You can change them. Well, I mean, technically you can, but you really don't want to, because you'd have to go ahead and desolder and, yeah, be a real pain. So you gotta hope that the leads that the meter ships with are relatively good. Now, as we take a close look here, you can tell the default leads are quite sharp. They're pointy, they feel good. You have a Cat 3 rating, maximum 250 volts. Okay. Now, considering this has a 600 volt rating, I probably would have preferred to see a slightly higher rating in terms of voltage on the probes themselves. Especially when in the box, they're saying 600 volts, not 250. Anyway, Let's try continuity. Okay, we're in continuity mode. Default probes. Here we go. So not bad, not bad. I wish it was a little bit louder. But in terms of the actual input, I'd say that's quite good actually. Once again, audibility wise, it's a little on the low side. There is no visual indicator, it's strictly audible, but it's scratchy, non-latching, but it works. And I'm really applying next to no pressure, so yeah, continuity wise, it is a pass. Now we're going to check out capacitance. I've got a 10 millifarad. That's a 10,000 microfarad capacitor standing by. Let's see. Can we reach the maximum rating? Into the millifarad range. There we go, 9.626. So that is a Roger. Good stuff. Now the Richmeters has a pretty wide capacitance range, and here we're going to also try the 0.01 microfarad capacitor. So this should show up as around 10 nanofarad. And there we go, no problem at all. Another nice feature with the RM088 is that it does have a rel feature. So we're going to test resistance now, and first what we're going to do is we're going to rel out the leads. So we're going to put those leads together, and there we are, hit the rel button, and now we shouldn't have any offset. Okay, we have a 0.5 ohm, 5% resistor. Let's check it out. There we go, spot on, 0.5. Okay, now we're in diode mode, and let's just see how well the RM088 does in terms of lighting up the diodes and showing us that forward voltage drop. Here we go, starting off with the green, and 1.86. Barely illuminating that diode. And the red, 1.795, and it is lighting it up, no problem. Let's go to the blue. No problem, 2.575. Down to the white, same thing, it's lighting it up, 2.5. Finally, the yellow. 1.8 volts, looks good. AC mode, 120.4 volts, perfect. And once again, the nice thing here is you can check your frequency, and 60 hertz, 59.99. Good stuff. We're set up for non-contact voltage. Here we go, we're set to EF as you can see. And it's quite sensitive. And you also have that visual as well as the audio display. Yeah, I guess I'd call that a pass. Good job. So to get into the back of the meter, we have a couple of Phillips, actually 3 altogether, small Phillips. One, 2, and 3. There we go. And first thing you notice, yes, it is not your typical AAA or 9-volt battery. No, this takes an RS-232. I'm sorry, a CR-2032. So 3 volts. And those are pretty easy to find everywhere. They're cheap, and shouldn't be any issues obtaining those. So if we look at the strain relief right off the get-go, what do we see? So we see we have quite a bit of redundancy here, which is nice. The actual strain relief is over here, so we have almost an inch of that lead before the strain relief kicks in. So, you know, there's going to be no wear and tear here, so this should last. That's where the battery cell sits on top of, and here is our, what do we have here? Yeah, that's our LED for the flashlight right here. Okay, so we're going to open it up a little bit further because we really aren't seeing a whole lot initially. Okay, so that just comes right off, and we'll just put that aside for a minute. And we'll look here, the display itself. So we have our zebra strip right here. This is what feeds the LCD display. It's in there quite nice and snug. It's not going to go anywhere. Here's the rubber push button holders, and once again the underpad for the battery. On the other side, the meter, there's no shielding. This is the piezo, the speaker. Super thin. It's embedded right into the molding of the... So here we are taking a look at the PCB itself. And remember, this multimeter does not do current, so there is no current shunt, strictly voltage. What do we have in terms of input protection? Not a whole heck of a lot. We have one lonely PTC here, a couple of resistors. That's pretty well it. Here are the embedded contacts for the push button switches themselves. Moving up to the board, we have a 4, just double check what that is, a 4 megahertz crystal oscillator, and underneath that, I can zoom in a little bit here, it's pretty hard to read. That is a 24C02A. That's a 2 kilobyte EEPROM that stores the config file for the main microcontroller, this guy here. Now, chances are that the IC that's embedded is the DTM0660, just because more often than not, when you see this EEPROM, usually that DTM0660 is part of the design. So I'll bet you anything that's what's the main IC. It's a DreamTech International IC. Super popular multimeter controller. Performs all the analog to digital ADC conversion, drives the LCD display, and all the config data for this IC is stored here in that EEPROM. Other than that, not a whole lot going on. We have the contacts for the elastomar or the zebra strip here for the display. That's pretty well it. So very tiny, but in terms of the actual finishing itself, it's quite nice, quite clean. I don't see anything untowards about it. Looking at the solder connections, let's take a close look here. What do you think, guys? Is that a pass for those two the connectors? I'd say I'll give that about an 8.5 out of 10. Probably could have done a little better job when they had their pliers out. I would have taken off a bit of that pin out here hanging off. But other than that, looks okay. Okay, so we're going to put this guy back together, and I'll give my closing thoughts. Closing thoughts on the Richmeters RM088. It's a pretty cool little multimeter. If you can get off the annoying, rather, I find it annoying at least, the functionality with the select switch. I would have preferred just to have everything, you know, with one button. Leave me the DC, the AC, the continuity, the resistance, put it all on one switch and be done with it. I don't really like having to play with these back and forth, but other than that, I think it's a pretty cool little device. Now, the leads themselves are pretty darn thin. I would have liked to have seen a little bit thicker, especially if I'm measuring the voltage on the mains. And speaking of voltage on the mains, if this meter is rated at 600 volts, why are the leads only 250? That being said, qualities-wise, it's pretty nice, pretty decent. Very small package. You can certainly slip this in your pocket with little fuss. Does not come with any sort of a case, and the leads themselves don't have any covers as well. That would have been nice to see. So when you do put it, just make sure that nothing's going to get all schmutzed. schmutz. Is that even a word? Anyway, I like it. It's a pretty neat niche little multimeter. It'll certainly fit in any glove compartment or toolbox, and has pretty good ranges. I mean, we're talking 10 millifarad on the capacitance range, 80 mega ohm for the resistance range. Pretty versatile. I'm going to give the Richmeters RM088 a solid 4 out of 5 stars. Speaking of Richmeters, I want to say thanks to Tony. Now, this particular meter didn't come from him, but Tony from Richmeters is sending a few goodies my way, Multimeters and some other stuff. Thanks, Tony. And when I do get these items, I will definitely be doing reviews on them. Till the next one, keep on testing.